This is Bryce on BYU. Wow, guys, welcome back. Wow. That is all I've had on my mind as this game has come to an end for BYU. Whew. What a night for us Cougar fans. I mean, I'm maybe I'll for the video side of this, I'll post right here the win probability, and I mean it's just wild. Look at that lines there at the end going up and down, trying to, the ESPN probability, trying to figure out is this going to be BYU winning or Oklahoma State winning, and oh my goodness. So what a game. BYU is able to take down Oklahoma State when the odds were stacked against BYU. And I mean, it's just another one of those just classic, BYU, Nebraska, BYU, BYU taking down in the Miracle Bowl, just all sorts of classic games. This is one of them. We were actually on the road. We went to a comedy show tonight. I know BYU, but I was watching the game as I was watching this comedy show, and we were on our way back, and when Oklahoma State scored that touchdown, I was sitting in my head as I was driving the car, and I was going. I was just thinking, oh my gosh, the undefeated season's over. I was like, you know what? It happens, but I'm still thinking like, my brain starts going worst case scenario. Like, oh, what if this starts to slide for BYU and, the season turns into just an incredibly average season? It's way better than we expected regardless. But like, my brain was just going on all these worst case scenarios. But BYU is now 7-0. And there's a lot to break down in this game. BYU's defense looked vulnerable tonight. I think Oklahoma State had a great game plan. And, I think we can honestly say, despite losing all 4 of their conference games so far, this is still an Oklahoma State team that was vying for a conference championship last year. They were in the conference championship game. And so, there's so much to break down. Jake Retzlaff, great way to end that game, but ultimately not his best performance. He had 13 completions on 26 attempts for 218 yards, 2 touchdowns, but also 2 huge interceptions. And then Hinckley Rapati also threw a third one, but luckily that one did not result in any points. But you just wonder, had BYU been able to get more out of, or have been able to take care of the ball, if this game had been maybe a little less interesting. But it's one of those things though where sometimes you have games that you're going to be tested because you're not necessarily able to put the same product you've been able to put out on the field. And BYU showed that they were resilient and they were able to come back and win this game. So yeah, the game ends. The game ends on that incredible catch and that incredible juke from Darius Lassiter. Wow, that was incredible to watch. And I mean, the broadcast from Gregor Bell was incredible to listen to. It was just one of those calls where you just, my wife and I were yelling in the car. I watched the highlights as I got back home, and oh my goodness gracious, what an ending to the game. What a run by Jake Retzlaff. It was just an incredible game all around. What a way to show that you can rise to the big moments and be a great team. This team has been great so far. 7-0. Who in their right minds imagine that? And who imagined in their right minds that at the beginning of the year that we'd be beating an Oklahoma State team? Yeah, sure, their season hasn't gone the way they wanted it to, but I really do think that Oklahoma State showed a lot of resiliency tonight on their own end, and you're going to see them have a good end to their season. That's really how I think it's going to go down. I think BYU and Utah fans alike want it to go down that way because they want to show, like, yeah, we beat a good team. But yeah, BYU, they got tested and they rose to the occasion. They were able to beat Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, they started with Garrett Ringel, and they ended up subbing him out for Alan Bowman, and Alan Bowman came in and led some good drives. Ollie Gordon had a great game before he was injured. He was 16 carries for 107 yards, 2 touchdowns. Garrett Ringel himself had 5 carries for 77 yards. Fields was a spark plug. I mean, there's just a lot to be said for the way that Oklahoma State handled themselves. But ultimately, like I said, BYU was able to come away with it. This is a great game from LJ Martin. He was able to kind of basically be the workhorse. He had 20 carries for 120 yards. He also had another 81 yards from Jake Retzlaff on 9 carries and 47 yards from Hinkley Rapati. BYU had a great rushing attack. They had 255 rushing yards. If you had told me that they'd have 255 rushing yards going into the game, I would have honestly thought that BYU was going to win by a lot more. But, Oklahoma State, like I said, they came out with a good game plan. Our defense had moments where they just kind of looked a little flat. But they were also able to make some big plays right kind of. They had interceptions of their own. 2 interceptions total. No forced fumbles tonight. And so, ultimately, yeah, it's one of those games where if you could take back some of those mistakes, you would. But BYU was able to overcome them. And I think that's one of the markings of a great team. And I think we can honestly say at this point, BYU is a really good team. They're a great team. Could this be a BYU team of destiny? We'll see. We'll honestly see. Everything is still in front of us for BYU. And that play saves the season in terms of BYU still having everything to play for going forward. Even if they had lost, everything would have still been on the table, but you would have had to work that much harder for it. In terms of like hope, and you would have had to rely on some luck, and that's what would have made it tough for BYU going forward. We would have been watching more games in terms of trying to figure out what was going to happen for BYU. Overall, looking at the game stats, BYU just edges Oklahoma State in first downs. They were able to get 5 of 10. It wasn't great third down efficiency, but not terrible. Both teams were 2 of 2 on fourth down. Oklahoma State definitely edged us in third down efficiency. They were 9 of 13. So while BYU missed out on 5 third down conversions, and Oklahoma State missed out on 4, and while it seems like a closer amount, Oklahoma State was doing it at a higher clip. BYU outgains Oklahoma State 473 yards, 421 yards. I mean, definitely those yards at the end clinched that, and they were the most important yards we had. BYU outpassed and outrushed. BYU had 218 yards to Oklahoma State's 152. Okay, so they didn't quite outrush. I'm sorry, I misspoke. BYU had 255 yards rushing. Oklahoma State had 269 yards. And that was a big story in this game. Oklahoma State being able to pound them with the ground game. Jay Hill's going to have to see what he can do this week to clean that up and make sure that doesn't become a common issue for BYU to deal with going forward. But they were able to deal with it against Kansas State. So I think there will be adjustments made to the game plan that will allow BYU to handle other teams going forward. They weren't outpossessed by too much. BYU had it for 28 minutes, 17 seconds, and Oklahoma State had it 31 minutes, 43 seconds. We were finally beaten in the turnover margin. They had 2 turnovers. We had 3, but we made more uses out of those turnovers. So yeah, like I said, it was so much to break down, and there was so much that happened. But BYU ultimately, Jake Retzlaff throws a great touchdown to Darius Lassiter to end the game, and then BYU was able to get that hold. As Oklahoma State tried to do some laterals, BYU was able to just shut it down and make sure that the game was ended, and BYU wins and 38-35 and 7-0. So everything to play for. I mean, now you're still able to talk about, can we continue to win? We're going to be playing UCF next week, and then we have a bye week following before we play Utah, and then Utah, and then Kansas, and then Arizona State, and then Houston. So everything's there to play for BYU. Everything's still in play. BYU needs to just go out and continue to push and get the best out of their team so that way they can continue to play for everything. And I think that's the team culture. They want to be able to go out and they want to be able to set themselves up for the possibility of making the playoff and possibly going for a national championship. I didn't think we'd be even close to talking about that at this point in the season, and yet here we are. I'm glad we're here, and so now BYU is gonna have every chance to play for everything. But yeah, enjoy. You know, most of you guys are probably gonna be watching this either the day or two after the game was actually over. I'm posting this, night of, as soon as I could, kind of stuff with my kids and everything. But man, what a game, what a night, and enjoy college football weekend. And we'll see how this affects the rankings and how everything goes from here. But anyways, thank you guys for joining us again, and hopefully, we continue to have more good BYU to talk about going forward. See you guys.